Hi guys, I'm Megan, and welcome to another chapter of There I Read It, where I'm going over the Harry Potter books for the first time ever in my life, and today we are in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The chapter is called Bagman and Crouch, and that is number 7. So this is really a detail-oriented chapter that's really kind of slow, and we're just sort of seeing things from a different perspective in the wizarding world. So there are a ton of little things that get brought up, but my impression is that these are things that are not gonna come back into the story. Like a little 2-year-old kid who's using his father's wand and not getting a message from the ministry, I might add. And then there were these little tiny witches riding brooms that barely got high enough for their toes to kind of scrape the grass. But it's interesting because really most of our look into the wizarding world has been Diagon Alley. We've been to Hogsmeade a few times, but I mean truly we don't have that expansive of a picture of Hogsmeade at this point. So this is the wizarding world from a different point of view. So it's interesting. But the notes I have this time are the Muggle disguises that all of the wizards are supposed to be using are really, really bad. There's one person who's in a tweed jacket with knee-high galoshes, which, you know, not the most respectable of attire. You wouldn't look very professional or sane like that. And then somebody else has a kilt with a poncho, and his name is Basil. And there's another guy walking around, this old man who's in this long flowered muumuu that an old granny would wear as a nightgown. So the wizards kind of don't get it, and at the same time I don't understand how they don't get it. Because sure, there's places like Hogsmeade where theoretically a wizard would never have to interact with the regular world, but a lot of them do. Thinking back to early on in the very first book, The Sorcerer's Stone, Harry would say that it wouldn't be uncommon for people to come up and like want to shake his hand or something. So there are plenty of wizards, by the sound of it, who do interact with the regular world. So it's really strange at how far they are also disconnected. Like, it doesn't make sense. I feel like maybe Rowling, I feel like I say it wrong, I don't care. I feel like JK just sort of thought of this in the aftermath of, oh, I think that this would be humorous, and didn't maybe necessarily remember what she had already established. Because just like the gun issue in The Prisoner of Azkaban, yeah, there might be some really sheltered wizards who have no idea what a gun is, but for the most part they share the same universe with humans, so I just don't get it. And then Arthur and his kids, plus Harry and Hermione, they go over and talk to Mr. Roberts, who is a muggle, and he's managing the field that everybody's camped at. And Arthur is having a lot of trouble managing the money, and he doesn't quite know what the different bills are and how much he's supposed to pay, so he has Harry come over to help him. And Mr. Roberts is just suspicious in general because he's like, are you foreign? I had somebody try to pay me with like a hubcap piece of gold earlier. So is this some kind of foreign convention? And just how odd the whole crowd of people who've come through are. You know, this muggle is no fool. He's putting dots together that something's not right, even if he can't exactly identify what. And as he starts having these wheels turn a little bit faster and faster, somebody just all of a sudden appears and goes, "Obliviate!" And they totally erase Mr. Roberts' memory so that he is no longer fussing about what these weirdos are doing on his land. But the Obliviate person is from the ministry. They're talking about how they have to obliviate him 2 times a day because nobody at the campsite will keep it under wraps. You know, everybody's going way too big, being way too wizardy, and it's very obvious. So then Ludo Bagman's around. He's dressed as a Quidditch player, talking very loudly about Quidditch near the Muggles. And Bagman is the person in the ministry in charge of the games and sports kind of thing. So the World Cup is sort of his domain. He oversaw it. And he gave Arthur the tickets to come. And Bagman used to be a beater for the England Wimborne Wasps. I think I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Wimborne. And I'm not really familiar with English sports customs, but it kind of sounds like Quidditch is comparable to like the soccer teams. How like all these different cities have one, and then sometimes they'll band them together to do World Cup kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm not going to try to make this work. I don't know what I'm saying. But the takeaway from all of this is that Ludo Bagman, a person who is high up in the Ministry of Magic, who is running the Quidditch World Cup, is being really bad with his own rules. And while Arthur and the kids are walking around, they see these tents that have like chimneys and gardens and clovers all over them and just stuff that really sticks out like a sore thumb. And then Arthur puts up his tent and it looks pretty normal, but when they go inside, it's all TARDIS-y and it's like a 3-bedroom flat or apartment for my American friends. And they have 2 tents. I assume one is going to be just for the girls, but the tent was borrowed from Perkins. And Harry is thinking that inside of that tent is a lot like Mrs. Fig's house, who used to be his normal Muggle babysitter back with the Dursleys. Like, it smells weird and it's musty and it's kind of like an old person's house. And I wonder if that means that when Perkins used that tent last, maybe he didn't dry it out, you know, hang it up and let it dry out like you're supposed to. And that's why it got musty, because that's a real tent thing. I don't know sports, but I do know camping. And while Harry, Ron, and Hermione are off to fetch water, they see these Bulgarian tents, and they have these giant moving posters of Victor Crumb, who is an 18-year-old seeker for, obviously, the Bulgarian team. And for those of you who do not have the illustrated version, I mean, Crumb is kind of a hottie-toddy, isn't he? Gosh, I feel like a cougar saying that, but dang if I'm not into that kind of angst. I'm a girl that likes angsty boys. I create my own misery in life. And while the trio are walking around, they run into some different people that they know. There's Seamus Finnegan, who is camping with Dean Thomas. They find Ernie Macmillan, or is it Macmillian? That's how I wrote it down. I'm not sure which is right. But Ernie was the Hufflepuff in the Chamber of Secrets, and then Harry sees Cho Chang, which he thinks is so pretty. And even Oliver Wood is there, which it's good to see him. I was going to miss him in this book. And he is now on the Puddlemere United reserve team. Again, I have no idea what that means. I assume that means he's part of a team that is practicing, but they don't really play unless a real team's player gets injured and then they get substituted in. Something like that, maybe? The comments will hopefully correct me for however often wrong I am. But what's next? Oh, it is introduced for the first time in these books that other magic schools exist all over the world. And Harry feels kind of dumb that he didn't consider that possibility before, but in his defense, it wasn't important to the plot before, so it didn't matter. Oh, and something that Arthur mentioned I thought was kind of interesting. The Ministry has a division called the Unspeakables, and they do like top secret stuff that nobody actually knows what they do. And that was just one of those things that made me go, huh, I can see where they're going with that, but it's just a strange sort of terminology to put to it. Then Ludo Bagman shows up where Arthur is with the kids, and he is just really loud and brash and wearing, you know, his bright Quidditch uniform from back in the day that barely fits. It kind of reminds me, for a good chunk of time, I was pretty like super fat in school, and then I lost a bunch of weight. So to just sort of strut my stuff, I would put on like my 2nd grade Halloween costume and be like, ha, it still fits. Kind of like that episode of Family Guy where Peter puts on Stewie's onesie. And he goes, well, if I'm fat, then Stewie's fat because we wear the same size onesie. So it was kind of like that, where the outfit was way too small. You know, my arms and legs were like a foot uncovered by the fabric, just sticking out all over the place. And I was still just like, yes, it fits. I'm amazing. So I guess on that front, I feel where Mr. Bagman is at this point in his life. But Bagman's taking all these bets with different wizards. He wants to make a bet with Arthur, but Arthur doesn't really put up a good enough bet, so Fred and George do. And I didn't write down their bet, but it was something like Ireland's going to win the match, but Bulgaria's going to catch the snitch, which is a very difficult thing to do since the snitch by itself is worth 150 points. Then Bagman starts talking about Barty Crouch, and he's another Ministry person. He speaks over 200 languages, and Percy is very impressed just by the mention of him. But when Barty Crouch shows up, he, shoot, I didn't write it down. He called Percy something really weird like Wiggins. And that just kind of deflated Percy's ego there a little bit. Not that he probably didn't need it, but we all need a little bit of an emotional slap around sometimes to keep us grounded. My own son, who is 4 at this moment, decided to tell me the other day that your life is really sad, Mom. It's not a very happy life, is it? Like, no. Oh, and then another detail that caught my eye, but I don't think it's gonna come back to mean anything, is that Britain has a ban on flying carpets. And instead, everybody uses brooms because for whatever reason, carpets are banned. But I thought, oh my gosh, that is so cool that that is a possibility in this universe. And apparently the carpets are more like a family vehicle. So if you're all going to the same place, you can all fly together, which is neat. You know, it's something I hadn't really thought about before, but now that we're seeing all these witches and wizards with tiny little kids, how do they get around with brooms? I mean, it would have to be very difficult to balance and hang on and hold a kid at the same time. And especially when things that are more practical, like the flying car from the second book, are banned. They're illegal in this world. So I wonder why, and I wonder what they do instead. How do they make that work? Anyways, the trio starts wandering around through the different vendors and buying these different things, and Ron gets a minifigure of Victor Crumb. And they're just like little guys that walk around in the palm of your hand making faces or posing or scowling or whatever. And it kind of reminds me of that episode of Adventure Time where Finn found this bag and inside were all of these different miniature figures of people from his life. So he was kind of messing around with them because they were alive and, you know, having them test out different scenarios. And I can't remember what the point of that episode was, but it always stuck out to me weird because we don't know where it came from and it felt like it had no purpose. But then the kids find omni-oculars, which are these binoculars that can replay action, go into a slow-mo mode, and do play-by-plays if you need to, which I think these are going to end up being important because they seem to have very specific, good, overpowered functions. And Harry buys 3 of them, gives 2 to his friends, and keeps 1 for himself. And Ron is really touchy about getting 1. They cost 10 galleons a piece. And he's like, no, I don't have the money. No, I don't want charity kind of thing. And Harry's like, no, you're just not going to get Christmas presents for the next 10 years. You know, something like that was the response. But this is the first time where we see Ron getting touchy about finances. It's been an issue since the second book where we, the readers, realize that the Weasleys are poor and that Harry's just kind of, don't look at how much money I have. But we've never seen the Weasleys react in this kind of a way before where they're like, no, I will have no gifts, no charity. And I always had people say, well, you know, Harry couldn't have replaced Ron's wand because the Weasleys are such proud people. And I always felt like I really never saw that in the context of the second book. But here we go, having that introduced finally. And I assume that that's going to come back to be something more important later on in the book or a future book, because obviously the author had to take the time and establish that. So since she didn't bother to establish that way back in book 1 or 2, you know, Ron had no problem sharing all that candy with Harry. He never went, oh, I don't have the money. I couldn't pay you for these. He didn't say anything like that in book 1. So for it to be established now in book 4, I think that means there's going to be financial things popping up later on, but we'll see. And then Hermione, showing her own good faith contribution to the group, she buys programs, I think for everybody, but they weren't exactly clear about that. And then it's the end of the chapter and all these green and red lanterns are lighting up and leading the way to where the Quidditch field is going to be, so they know the game is about to start. Although, what is Mr. Roberts seeing? Can he see these? And Roberts also mentions that usually people just show up and camp there. It's not a reservation needed system. So what happens if other people come and decide they're going to do a vacation right there and now? They're going to see everything. Are they going to obliviate everybody? I mean, does the ministry have that many people on hand to staff this thing like that? Because I feel like some muggles are going to end up slipping through the cracks here. But again, this was a bit longer of a chapter than quite a few of the other ones so far. It's not a bad chapter. I really do like that we get a more fuller sense of all these different types of wizards out in the world, but it also really felt like nothing happened in this chapter. You know what I mean? It was like a showing chapter not so much of a telling you things that are relevant for the plot. But maybe there's going to be a lot of things that twist back in and they just didn't stick out as much as they normally would, because it seems now that we're out of the third book, the Scholastic Company stopped trying to edit down what the author was allowed to write. So, oh no, you know, this takes away from the plot, this doesn't go anywhere, we don't need that kind of stuff. And they're just like, you know what, you do you, honey. We trust you at this point. That's the impression I have, because these chapters have been, not bad chapters by any means, but a lot more slower and a lot less railroady. Whereas in the first 3 books, it was like, okay, we have to hit a checklist of doing this, and this. And every single one of those things have a purpose that's going to pay off at some other point in the book. I think we are officially beyond that right now. So we'll see if I'm right. Anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, whatever you feel like doing. It is always something that I am so grateful for you doing. And other than that, I guess we will see you next time with the next chapter. Thanks for watching. Bye! Well, Fanily members, we're almost done, but I want to invite you to hang out with me in some other places. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as my own personal self, and I have a Facebook page too, but I mostly just post photos over there. And sometimes people say, hey McGann, I want to mail you something. How do I do that? Easy. Just click the About tab on my channel page, and my most current P.O. Box info will be right there. I also run another channel, The Fanily. It's really a hodgepodge channel where we might post anything. Oh yeah, and I also sell shirts and stickers and stuff with the Fanily and the Fangirl logos. If that is your cup of tea, I have a link in every description of every video. Finally, if you want to help out the Fangirl channel and make sure I'm putting out video essays for years to come, the best way you can help is by subscribing and watching more of my videos, whether they're new, old, whatever. Maybe even share 1 or 2 on social media, help spread the word. People who watch to the end of videos like you helps to tell the site, hey, this is a good video, we should recommend it to other people. So if you made it this far, leave me a comment of something like, hey, I made it to the end. Love ya. See you next time, Fanily members. Bye.